Hi everyone, thanks for joining me. This video is going to be a follow-up on the interview that I had with Carla yesterday from Carlastrology, where I talked about the books and the authors and my mystical journey. And I wanted to share those books with you, having to do with astrology, evolutionary astrology, esoteric astrology, psychology, the Enneagram. So if those topics are of interest to you, please stay tuned. I will share those. I also want to talk about something that came up during the interview, which was the importance of grounding and centering. When we are doing any kind of study or readings for others, it takes a lot of our energy, our psychic energy, our intuitive energy. And most practitioners have found that if they ground themselves, they are able to tap into the energy of the earth, the energy of spirit and the sky. The method that I shared when someone from the chat room asked me to describe the method that I use is the one that I've been using only for the last 2 years. Prior to that, I was using the system that I was taught in my spiritual classes of evolution, and that was to take your grounding cord and you really began it into the ground from the soles, the bottom of your feet. And everything else with the seventh chakra, of course, was the same. But as I began understanding a deeper sense of the energy of the 7 chakras and the base chakra, and I talked about it yesterday by saying to start that grounding cord at the tailbone, which is at the base chakra, that in reality it is our grounding chakra, and it does have to do with the legs and the feet. And I found that through this awareness and connecting my grounding cord at that tailbone, at that root chakra, I was getting better energy, even greater times that I could do readings for others by doing it that way. Now, whether that just eliminated the idea that that energy was coming up from the bottom of my feet into my legs, into my thighs, and then the rest of my body, I don't know. But I do want to contribute where that knowledge, some of it stemmed from. And I am and I'm looking for my books, friends, because there are so many here that I'm wanting to share with you. But I think many of you are familiar with Anadana Judith, and she has written Wheels of Life, excellent book about the chakra system, and much, much more. And then she went on to write, well, she co-authored a book with Celine Celine Vega. And the title of it is the Sevenfold Journal, where you are taking reclaiming your mind, your body, and your spirit through the chakras. Now, this is a proactive sevenfold method. It's going to teach you certain types of meditation, yoga, and that yoga practice could be individual or with a partner. She's going to give you exercises. There are journal entries, but it's reconnecting with that sevenfold energy system on a psychological, on a spiritual level, and it really does fine-tune those 7 energy centers within your body, mind. It seems like you integrated, that journey is a process of integrating. So I do recommend that if you're interested in more information about the chakras and understanding just how important and powerful and instrumental they are, not even in our physical, but in our mental health and well-being. Okay. Then I spoke about, and excuse me there for a second, I spoke about my love of astrology, and I began for many, many years studying Western astrology professionally with astrologers, but I never did get my certification and became a certified astrologer, and that is the reason why I don't go out and publicly teach it. I feel like that certification is crucial, but I do use astrology and the forms that I'm going to speak about here with you in this video extensively. I tend to use Western astrology when the client or the person that I'm working with is not in a state of evolutionary interest spiritually, that they're there to get information about what's happening in their life at this moment, a deeper understanding of maybe patterns that they're repeating and what's going on with their family, people at work, on and on. And I tend to use the Western astrology and everything that it has to offer with that when I consult that. Now, with those clients that come in, that are spiritual, that may be other tarot readers, healers, anyone of that essence, interest, level of understanding, then I go beyond that and I do more evolutionary astrology and esoteric astrology. So there's the guideline. They're all useful. I recommend understanding the deeper aspects of astrology. If you are in social working, counseling, the psychology of astrology is very, very useful. I'll also be talking about the Enneagram, and that's used in psychology and social workers and healers and tarot readers when we're talking about understanding the types of the personality, the spiritual essence of typing the personalities and going beyond that. So let's get back to astrology. Now, some of the authors that I just could not remember, or I said very quickly but did not know the titles of the books, and keeping the mindset of where I'm coming from in this field of astrology, because I have astrology books on a lot of areas, but it's the psychology. As you know, I love Carl Jung, his philosophy, his interest in astrology, spirituality, soul, the humanity and where it's going right now, all of his writings. And I tend to go that route. And I found that Dan Rudyard, and I'm going to talk about evolutionary astrology. Well, back in the 70s, he kind of rocked the boat with traditional Western astrology, and he came out with an astrological study of the psychological complexities. Again, understanding personality and what goes on between parents, mothers, fathers, children's, significant others. He really, and even the planets, the psychology of the planets and the complexities of the individual chart. So this book is very good, instrumental, again, if you do any counseling or wanting to know yourself better or the dynamics of that father-mother-child relationships, the astrological study of psychological complexities by Dan Rudyard, I do recommend. Now, he had another book, and it's called, this was early 70s, I think it was 1970, I don't want to take the time to look, but it's The Pulse of Life. And what we have here are the 12 phases, or let's call them signs, of human experience, and all of those that we go through and how to integrate them. So this is kind of an astrological passage, the phases that each of us go through those 12 zodiac signs, or what he calls phases. Another great book. All right, now let's get a little bit more into the Jungian psychology, and a Jungian psychologist is Liz Green, but she is also an astrologer. And where do I have her little pile? Right here. Okay. Now, again, since I did so much work teaching, readings, working with people, again, understanding psychology types, Liz Green had a great book called Relating a Astrological Guide to Living with Others. And again, it's on astrology and Jungian psychology. It is excellent. Everything is described. She puts examples of how to best understand the individual that is not only personality-wise, but their potential and how each of us can interrelate with understanding aspects of that other, the relationship with other. And it isn't only relationships with people that you may live with, but relationships on the whole in the business world. So the Relating book by Liz Green, I do recommend. Okay, I'm going to lift this book up, and I want everyone that loves the tarot to tell me what they think about this image. This is a very early book by Liz Green that I bought a long time ago, and it is falling apart. And it's Saturn, but it's an old look at an old devil. Now, going back to that image, I see the Hermit. I don't know about you, holding a lantern. Okay. Now, traditional astrology had the 7 planets, Saturn being the last of those 7 planets that you could see with the naked eye, that astrologers before telescopes was able to see. Now we understand that there are outer planets, also called transpersonal planets, and those are, of course, Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto. But looking at this picture and realizing that Saturn was the big king, he's known as Father Time, the taskmaker, the Lord of Karma. Well, he had that radiant sun, and he was the last of where that sun was shining. And he was somewhat of, let's say, a gatekeeper from where we understood the planets and their influences on the world and humanity. And outside of Saturn, well, you have the universe, the unknown, the cosmos. So he was that doorway to both worlds. And I see that with the Hermit. The Hermit is also a card that indicates that there is wisdom at this point because I've been disciplined. I've done my work. I understand those previous cycles. And what I mean by that is those previous cards on our journey and all of the planets prior to Saturn being the last. So I just made that correlation. This is an excellent book. Saturn is very, very important in the chart. And being a Jungian psychologist, she adds so much depth to understanding the planet and the gifts of that planet. The taskmaker is for our own good. Now, again, for my tarot lovers, the Mythic Tarot, which we know is by Juliet Sherman Burke, is also co-authored with Liz Green. So there's a lot of Jungian and mythology that comes from Liz Green awareness and knowledge of astrology, psychology from Carl Jung's teachings. So the Mythic Tarot, this book, I just wanted to bring to your attention. Liz Green is in that also. So the last, well, no, there's 2 more. Okay, back to astrology. Being a Scorpio, Pluto has always been a planet that fascinated me, and I had to understand it as my ruling planet. It is the new ruler. The ancient ruler of a Scorpio is Mars. But there was a revolutionary astrologer named Jeff Wolfe, and he had a mystical experience with the Tibetan masters, which really correlates to the other astrology that I'll be talking about here in a little while. And he had a book called Pluto, The Evolutionary Journey of the Soul, Volume 1. How important it is to understand Pluto in your chart, what it's doing. And then he went on with number 2, the soul's evolution. And this is through relationships, and it has a lot to do with mysticism as well. They're in-depth books. They're quite deep. something that I'm just throwing out there as an evolutionary astrologer. Jeff Green is known as the father of evolutionary astrologer. And then he wrote another book. I should say he co-authored another book. It's edited by Linda Johnson, but it has to do with the evolutionary astrology when it comes to medical astrology, and he add the modalities of not only the anatomy but the physiology and the chakra system. So Jeff Green, I love this book. He brings his mind, his spirituality into understanding the medical, connected especially with Pluto and the chakra system. Now Pluto, very quickly, I just want to make everyone aware here that is going to be changing signs. Pluto has been in Capricorn for a long time, close to 18 years possibly. It is now going to go into the next sign, which is Aquarius. And it's officially around March 17th, something like that. But it do-si-dos back and forth, okay, between Capricorn and Aquarius. But it's really going to get into Aquarius and be there, I think, up to 20 years. That is instrumental. That is, Pluto changes. Pluto is the god of the underworld. Understanding Pluto on a different level may help us as humanity understanding what's going to happen when it gets into the sign of Aquarius, because the United States is having a Pluto return. Our ascendant is Aquarius. So all of that, I thought I would bring to light. Okay, the last person. Now, being that I love the mysticism, that I believe in reincarnation, that I believe in karma, yes, there is an astrologer that is into all that, and it's Martin Schumann. And what caught my eye with him, even before I got into esoteric astrology, was his books on karmic astrology, namely Joy and the Parts of Fortune, and then understanding retrograde and how he looks at them in phases, 3 phases for each retrograde planet that you have in astrology, how there is that karmic connection from past lives. Fascinating. These are classics. I have a lot of them. I didn't want to hold them all up. It's a series having to do with karmic astrology. Martin Schumann is very important. And this is the one that I would say for anyone who wants to get a dab of esoteric astrology, because the main theme about esoteric astrology, even without theosophy, is the importance of the soul. And what Martin did here is the ascendant, your karmic doorway, really segues with esoteric astrology. Esoteric astrologers look at the ascendant differently than Western astrology, which I explained a little bit in the video. And Western astrology says your ascendant is your persona. That's what you show to the world. It even may have characteristic traits of your physiology, your body, what it looks like. The ascendant in esoteric astrology has to do with the idea that your ascendant faces towards the east. That is the spiritual, the essence, the incoming soul coming from something from the east, outside, and coming into the zodiac, your horoscope. This is the soul's purpose, the soul's meaning, and it sets up all of the other houses in your chart, knowing that time of birth. And this book is a wonderful, I would say, primer of understanding your ascendant differently than Western astrology and not getting very heavily into esoteric astrology. So again, the ascendant, your karmic doorway. Okay, let's talk about mysticism very, very quickly here. I talked about that I was raised in a very mystical Catholic background. My parents believed in mystics. My parents believed in the Catholic saints and those who evolved. And one of them was Teresa of Avila. and she was a 15th century Carmelite nun. And at that time, let's be honest, she was fighting the system, the male dominant force of religion, that hierarchy. She was told what to write, how to write it, but she overcame all those self-imposed limitations, conquered that fear, and this was her greatest achievement, and it's called The Interior Castle, and it was written in the late I think 1570, something like that. Of course, it's been edited by Alison Pierce. And it is her journey that she talks about the evolution of her connection to God through the soul. And you enter the castle. She depicted as this beautiful diamond or this clear crystal, and that her castle had 7 rooms or 7 mansions. And they're not, it isn't like you're going up a floor. She has the different rooms. Maybe room number 3 might be to the left. But that her mystical experience and the groundwork and her trials and tribulations of getting to know herself, her soul, and God ultimately. Entering the castle is a great journey, spiritual journey that you may want to take. And it is the original book, and then someone else that I talked about yesterday that really is so instrumental in my life. I love Carolyn Mays. Many of you know her by energy medicine, why people heal, some don't, sacred contracts, and I can go on and on. She went ahead and did her own evaluation of entering the castle, An Inner Path to God and Your Soul by Carolyn Mace. Carolyn says that it was a life-changing journey for her, and basically what it is the idea of our spiritual journey on a contemplative level of the mystic, of mysticism, and gaining introspection as you get into the essence of who you are and why you are, and the struggles that make you stronger. So the inner path of God and your soul, this is, I read this and I did, and of course it's much easier to do Carolyn's path work than it was to do Saint Teresa's path work. So there's that mysticism. Of course, Saint Francis of Assisi is another one, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute with the Enneagram here. Okay. Esoteric astrology. Okay, so how did I get into esoteric astrology? It all began when I was doing hold on. Here it is. Okay. Doing regular astrology, and then by Alan Leo, there was his first book, Esoteric Astrology, and I couldn't for the life of me remember Leo's first name yesterday, but I had help from a beautiful friend. And Alan Leo, Esoteric Astrology, is the impetus of why I got deeper into it. Now, in this book, he doesn't talk about the 7 rays. He doesn't talk about theosophy. He's very strict and concise in what esoteric astrology is and the human body. He goes into a lot of symbolism, identifying with the ego, working with the ego. But the first beginning, and I don't think it was in the, I think it was in the preface. No, it wasn't in the preface. Hold on, I'm going to show you where, because I love my books, and some people cringe when they see that I highlight my books. I highlight my books, okay. But this is where it sent me down a rabbit hole with esoteric astrology. In the beginning of the book, he talks about the importance of esoteric astrology, the unification of the mind, the divine will. When I heard or read the divine will, I thought, the magician, here we go. Now, this is the quote that I want everyone to capture, having to do with what ancient astrologers said. And I quote, "The wise man rules his stars. The wise man rules his stars. The fool obeys them." Whoa, how powerful is that? And he went on to explain where he got this quote and how it changed his life, and that is from the author of The Secret Doctrine, which I alluded to yesterday. And folks, I think please forgive me here, I feel like I'm going down, that it introduced me to the Secret Doctrine written by Madame Blavatsky. And here is the book. And of course, I went and got it as soon as I could. Now, this is heavy reading. Madame Blavatsky is a Russian woman who went to Tibet and lived there for many, many years, and was taught by ascendant masters in Tibet. One of them was Dwakul. Now, Dwakul is also known as Master DK, and I bring this book because this is another great book. I'm working with the human aura. It's by Listen Prophet, but it talks about the teachings of Kwakul. Now, he is the ascendant masters has taught, and in the books that I'm going to be showing you, Madame Blavatsky and also Alice Bailey. Now, this book, The Secret Doctrine, is very, very hard to read because of the language. It was written in 1888. Of course, the added beauty of this is you're getting some footnotes and some elaborations from other scholars on her work. But it is really a thesis on many things of having to do with religion, having to do with philosophy, and having to do with science. And I wanted to just show you her face here very quickly. And the core of all of this knowledge basically is this, that no matter what religion, whether we're talking about Chaldean, Egyptian, Hindu, Buddhist, Catholicism, Judaism, all of that matter, but all of them trickle down to a core teaching that everyone agrees upon, and that is the one. That is the source. But this is a thesis on her extraordinary journey in Tibet and her teachings and the energy, lots of mysticism. And I do want to say that Saint Teresa of Avila also had visions and mystical experiences in her room. She had a vision from the Blessed Mother, which was not uncommon for a lot of the mystics. Same here. Okay, so there's the Secret Doctrine. Now, devotees of the Theosophical Society, because Madame Blavatsky is the founder of the Theosophical Society, is what I had just alluded to, which is Alice Bailey. And the first book that I got by Alice Bailey was, and I am sorry how bad a shape these are. Folks, these travel with me wherever I go. I mean, when I study, I try to get in as much time as I can, so I apologize for the condition that they're in. Esoteric healing, this is where I was talking about diseases of the mystic, where I learned about it. And basically, we all have diseases and potentials, and maybe hardwired to different diseases having to do with our psychology, our upbringing, how we live our life, the choices that we make, the experiences that we have. So that is where I got it. And I don't, again, try not to make this too long. The other book was The Thesis on White Magic. That is also by Alice Bailey. And remember that she is also getting information from the Ascendant Masters of Tibet. She's written the Letters of Occult Meditation, very deep meditations that you really have to practice on, but it's wonderfully done. It's informative. And then we finally got into the Esoteric Astrology from the Theosophical perspective, and with that comes the information about the 7 raises. Now, the 7 raises are really 7 states of consciousness. We are told that when we have our ascendant, that sign is not only going to have 1 ruler, some have 2, some have 3, 2 rulers for sure. Then there's a mystical ruler, but those rulers are planets. They are part of the 7 rays. That 7 rays has a purpose, a consciousness. Again, don't want to get into too heavy. Excellent books. But let's say you're interested in the 7 rays, you just don't want to go that deep, but you want to understand what it's all about, just in case, because I have other books in there on astrology and the 7 rays. I just didn't want to drag everything out, but this is the one that I do recommend if you're just trying to get a taste of what the 7 raises are all about and how they are typed to individuals from your zodiac sign and understanding them. And that is by Ernest Wood. It's a classic, the 7 rays. Okay, we're going to get into the Enneagram here very, very quickly. Now, the Enneagram is another way of personality typing, much like the Myers-Briggs, but this is an ancient type of typing that I talked about a little bit on my interview with Carla. And I'm going to talk about the books that I have used and suggest. And there are 3 authors that I like and recommend. Now, Ron Richard Rizzo, very popular, and this was the first one, and it's personality types using the Enneagram for self-discovery, okay? This is probably out of print. That was an introduction to it, and a lot of lay people and counselors, psychologists use this, by the way. And the Enneagram is going to show you where there's 9 points, and then the opposite point, kind of your shadow, where you are, but it's the typing is flexible, if I could be so kind to just kind of put it that way, that the one next to you and the one before you, they're all instrumental in understanding. It's a system that seems to incorporate the complexities of our personalities. We're not all one type. We are multiple, subtypes. And this really doesn't really get into that, but it gives you an understanding of the 9 personality types. Okay, now he went on and he did Discovering Your Personality Type, and in it you had the questionnaire. Now this was the first one. And then he came out with the second one, and he edited some of the literature and understanding of the types, and he expanded on the questionnaire. The questionnaire is very important because, like the Myers-Briggs, you answer the questions, you'll understand your personality type. Now, some people just read the personality types and they don't do the questionnaire, and they say it works for them. Everyone's different. If you're not wanting to have a book without the books with the question, then get personality types or some of the other ones I'm going to share with you. Now, Richard Rizzo went on to do a book with Russ Hudson. This was his first one, Personality Types Using the Enneagram for Self-Discovery. Very, very good, very good, very in-depth. And then, along with the same co-author, Russ Hudson, The Wisdom of the Enneagram. And I apologize, I remember bringing this to the beach. Not a good idea. It got wet. But anyway, it is the complete guide to the psychology and spiritual growth for the 9 personality types. Now, Don Richard Rizzo and the co-author Russ Hudson have their own website, I believe, their own Enneagram website. They have, I think it's called personalitytype.com. So they have founded that little niche of the Enneagram if you want to know more about them. Now, going back to what I said about St. Francis of Assisi. He was a Franciscan monk. The other books that I'm going to be showing you are by a Franciscan monk called Richard Roque. Maybe you are familiar with him. He's very popular. Now, the first book Richard wrote was with, well, the two of them, yeah. The two that I'm going to be sharing with you, he co-authored with Andreas Ebert. Now, Andreas Ebert is a Lutheran minister, I believe, but please don't get thrown off by that. Richard Roque, being a Franciscan monk, the Franciscans and St. Francis of Assisi really broke the limitations of, I'm going to say, the Catholic doctrine, and went outside of that and found connection with nature and humankind and expounded on that. Richard is a fantastic literature writer, teacher. I love his book, Discovering the Enneagram, the Ancient Tool for the New Spiritual Journey. Very good. And this one, Experiencing the Enneagram, and others, just expounds on them. Both of them are very, very good. So you decide if any of these are appealing to you. The last author that's quite popular, having to do with the Enneagram, and she's a little bit more contemporary, more psychological, is the Enneagram by Helen Palmer. It is Understanding Yourself and Others in Your Life. It's a popular book. You may have seen it. I enjoyed it. And then to go a little further, as you know, working with clients, understanding love, work, psychology, she wrote a book called The Enneagram in Love and Work, Understanding Your Intimate and Business Relationships. This was great, folks. It really helped me in counseling with the Enneagram and my clients and people that I know. So as you can see, it is a vast subject, endless possibilities. Where am I now in the Enneagram? Where am I now, period? I'm really trying to focus, again, understanding more of the esoteric psychology in my in my study of astrology. Of course, I'm expanding in the Kabbalah. I have groundwork on that, but there's all of these are lifelong studies. And voila, I found some, and of course, shadow work, okay? I'm getting into that. The Enneagram Guide to Waking Up. Find your path, face your shadow, discover your true self. I didn't get into this yet. I found it, I think, just before Christmas. It's by Beatrice Chestnut and Urano Piaz. That's spelled Uranio. Forward by Daniel Siegel, MD. Again, it looks like it's going to be excellent, having to do with shadow work, and your true self. Now, this is another one that I was so fortunate to find, the Enneagram and the Kabbalah and reading your soul. Now, this has been out since, I believe, 98. Let me double check. And I'm a little disappointed that I didn't find the correlation, because I'm always looking to interweave astrology, Kabbalah, tarot, the Enneagram, numerology with all of the other sciences. Didn't get into this, but if you are interested in the Kabbalah and the Enneagram, then here you go. This is by Rabbi Howard A. Edison. You might want to look it up. Have not gotten into these two books, but I wanted to share those with you to show you how I am trying to expand and get more knowledge in the Enneagram. Okay, thanks for staying with me this long. I'm sorry if it was boring. If you have any questions about any of these books and you want to know maybe the publisher's house or the additional information, please feel free to ask me in the comment sections. Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining me.